So in this video, we're going to be looking at how to properly hook up and disconnect your gauges, as well as calculating superheat and subcooling for an HVAC air conditioning unit. First off, a good rule of thumb is to always purge your gauges. I did that beforehand, but we can show you how right now. So first off, you loosen up both sides, as so. Undo the yellow just a little bit until you hear the hissing. Once the hissing stops and these gauges are down to 0, that means your thing is good. You tighten this back up and you're ready to hook up your gauges. Now we'll start by hooking up the blue and the red to their respective sides. Red side for the liquid line, blue side for the suction line. Try to do it quick so you're not spitting refrigerant everywhere. Okay. Now traditionally you would let this run for a little bit, about 5 to 10 minutes, in order to take an accurate superheat and subcooling, but for the purpose of this video we'll do it right now. So we can see on our gauges that we have a pretty decent pressure of about 50, I want to say 52 on our low side, and about 150, no, probably 180 on our high side. We will begin by calculating superheat. In order to calculate superheat, you're going to get your nifty PT chart. This machine takes R22, so we're going to focus on R22. And since we're doing superheat, we're going to focus on the low side, or your blue gauge right here. And that's telling us 52. So you go and find 52 on your PT chart on their PSIG, and that should be the temperature matching up with it. Now, we're going to use this device and put it on our suction line and tell us what the actual temperature of the line is. Give it about a minute in order for it to actually go down to temp. Okay, so you can take a rough estimation when it starts equaling out. So we're going to say 30.4. Now you take a look at your PT chart, because you're still at 52, and you're going to take the 30.4 and minus it by the actual. So 34.4 minus 27.6 is roughly going to be 2.8 or 2.4, somewhere in that ballpark. And that would be your subcooling. Now to take a look at, oh, my apologies. That would be superheat. Now to take a look at subcooling, we're going to focus on the liquid line. So, we're going to do the same process, just for the liquid line now. I'll set that up so that we can take that temp. Now we're going to take a look at the high side pressure, which is roughly 175. And now we find 175 on our PT chart. Right here, that temp should be 92.5, and on our device it's saying about 77.3. So if we do our calculations, 92.5 minus 77.3 is going to be roughly 18 degrees of subcooling. And that's basically how you would do superheat and subcooling. Now, since we're done with the main aspect, we're going to focus now on disengaging our gauges from the unit. Alright, in order to disconnect the gauges, first off, we're going to disconnect the red line. Now we're going to open up on the blue. And we're going to do a process that we call metering in, which we're gradually going to open up on the red so that it sucks pressure out of the gauges and back into the machine. We do this in order to maximize how much gets back into the machine and minimize how much stays in the hose that we have to purge later. Okay, once you see that the gauges aren't fluttering anymore and they're pretty much stable, that means that's the lowest pressure you can get. So you can close up on the red. And now take your blue line off. Put that back on. Now we're going to purge our hose. So we can either do it individually or all together. All together would be you open up both hoses and purge in the yellow, or you can do individually by opening up just one and then purging that line, which I'll do right now. That's the blue. Close that back up. You're going to have it bounce back a little bit. Don't worry. Alright, now if there's anything left, you can just open up both sides and get that last bit out. Okay. And now your gauges are purged. And you're good to go. So in this video, we'll be looking how to hook up and disengage our gauges from an AC valve type system, as well as taking the superheat and the subcooling of said system. So as we can see in these gauges, it's clearly not purged, so that's what we're going to have to do first. I'm going to open up on both sides, crack the yellow, so there's nothing in the gauge. Might have to do it again just to make sure everything's out. Make sure you close them both back up. Now we're going to take a look down here. We're going to make our connections right at these two valves. The bigger line is going to be your suction line. The smaller line here is going to be the liquid. So blue and red. Now these black caps here, you're going to take these off to reveal the screw heads of the valve. These are what we call king valves, and we're going to be using a special wrench seen here. It's known as the service wrench. We're actually going to be focusing on the 1/4 side in order to open these up.
Why are we opening them?
We're opening them because right now the gauges are currently isolated from the system because the valves are currently closed. So we need to open them in order to get the gauge a part of the system. Here's a little trick. If it doesn't open the one way, you hit this little device on the wrench to change which way it ratchets. Alright. You don't have to do it a lot, just 1/4 turn should open it up and you should start seeing a pressure reading. Now we're going to do it for the low side. Okay, and now we will start with calculating superheat. So we're going to use this device, stick it right on our suction line. Give it a minute or two to let it drop. And when it starts to equal out, that will be your line temp. Alright, it equaled out at 43.1. So we're going to go back to our PT chart for the refrigerant we're using, which is 134A. And based upon our temp of 42.6 now, and our pressure of 32, we're going to find 32 in here, corresponding temperature of 36.8, and we currently have a line temp of 42.6, so that is a superheat of 6.2. Now we're going to do the same thing, but for subcooling. So we're going to use this device again and stick it on our liquid line. Give it a minute to equal out. So you can see we have a gauge reading of 55, and I'll match it up with your PT chart. So at a pressure of 55, 155, we should have a corresponding temperature of 113.6. We're reading 105.6, so we have a subcooling of about 8.3. And now, since we're done with superheat and subcooling, we are now getting ready to disengage the gauges from the unit. So the first thing you're going to do is take your service wrench flip it. So now it will tighten. Close up on your high pressure or liquid side. From there, you're going to open up on the blue, and now you're going to meter your liquid side through the blue side back into the machine. Now do this very carefully, because you'll clearly hear the liquid start pouring back into your compressor, and that's a no bueno. So just do it carefully. All right, now that the pressures are evened out, I'm going to take my service wrench, close up on the low side, disengage my hoses, open up both valves, crack the yellow, okay. Now I'm going to put everything back where I found it. You're good to go.
Okay, so we've pre-purged our hoses beforehand. You want to connect your low side to your blue hose to your low side and your red hose to your high side. We put the Schrader / core puller onto the high side because that's where a lot of the refrigerant will be in a liquid form. Now you're going to want to come over to your recovery machine, and to start you want to be taking your yellow hose from your gauges. You want to be taking that to your inlet of your recovery machine. You want to have your outlet of your recovery machine. Since we are pulling liquid refrigerant first, you want to make sure it's going to the liquid red side of the recovery tank. You want to make sure that this is open and that your gauges will, your red side is open as well. Now, what you want to do is you want to start up the machine, and you're going to want to open this and open the red as well going to the tank. Now you want to fully open the red gauge until it goes all the way down to roughly 0 or a little bit lower than 0. Once that occurs, you're then going to want to come over to your recovery machine and turn off your inlet and turn off your outlet. You're going to come over here, you're going to close this valve, make sure it's closed, and then you're going to switch from the liquid to the vapor side. You're going to come back to the recovery machine, open your outlet, open your inlet, and then you're going to want to open your vapor side. Wait till that gets all the way down to 0 or just a minor vacuum. Then you're going to want to make sure you close that valve, close the inlet side, make sure it drains all the way out of your machine, close the outlet side, close your recovery tank valve, and then you are going to disconnect all your hoses. All right, now when you're recovering, you also want to keep in mind your cylinder itself. Now, this cylinder can hold a total of 26 pounds of refrigerant. Currently, we are sitting at 17 pounds, 8.75 ounces. Now, when you add your hose for the recovery process, you want to keep in mind that that hose has weight and will add more onto the scale itself. So you want to write down when you start. You want to write down how much is in the tank, and then you want to also remember how much the hose weighs. So typically, what I like to do is I take what we currently have, and I will take that minus 26, and then I'll hit tar. Now I'm gonna go until I hit the 17 pounds, 8.75 ounces minus 26. I'm gonna go until I hit that number, and then I'm gonna stop. Keep in mind you're gonna lose a little bit in the lines in the hose set. Then I'm gonna close the valve, disconnect, and if I am not fully done recovering the system itself, I'm gonna have to get another recovery tank because this one's maxed out, and we'll have to send this one back. All right, today we're going to be demonstrating how to hook up the vacuum pump to the recovery cylinder to get a vacuum into the recovery cylinder. So on your micron gauge, you're going to want to turn it on, and you're going to want to end up connecting it to the core puller. And then after you get that, now you're going to want to connect it onto the cylinder itself, just like we have here. What you're going to want to do is make sure that when you're doing it, you want to make sure that this valve is open. This is open as well, or else you won't be able to get the actual core puller in. You want to push it in, and then you'll twist it till you'll hear it like go in further, and then you're going to pull it all the way out. Make sure that you want to keep it all the way tight again, or else you won't be able to actually get it. Once you get it out, you're going to want to pull it out, close this valve, and then you'll be able to take this off, and then you should have the core itself. Then you want to take your hose from your vacuum here, and you're going to want to connect it onto this. Oops. Connect it all the way on, make sure it's tight. And then you're going to want to go over to your vacuum pump, turn it on, go until your micron gauge is reading roughly 500 or below. Right now we're looking at just under roughly, looks like we're sitting at 8,900. So you want to get that all the way down to 500 or lower. The lower the better. And just be careful with your vacuum pump. You want to make sure that your oil collector accumulator right here section is empty, because if you have it filled, it's going to be a problem. And then you just start.